Pleasure to meet everyone. My name is Vito. You can call me Vito for free. So I've been in the industry for quite a while. Not too old, so no need to call me Pa. Not too young also, but I already have 2 kids. But I'm not much of a lecturer. I'm more of a practitioner. So today I hope that I can give you guys more insight of what's happening in the real world, what's happening in the industry, and if you guys have any questions, if you guys have any business ideas, you want to talk, you want to discuss, I'm totally open to discuss about anything. So if you guys want to know what is it happening out there in Asia, how is the real business case in Asia, I'm open to any discussion. So me personally, I was in the financial industry for some time, and I've run 2 companies. The first one started in 2015 in the logistics industry, supply chain, and it went bankrupt. So I was failed. In 2018, it went bankrupt. Started a different company, which is now Eden Farm. And probably some of you have never heard of Eden Farm. Who is Eden Farm actually? So Eden Farm is a B2B food supply chain startup. We are actually now the biggest B2B food supply chain startup in Indonesia. You guys probably have never heard of us. Why? Because we focus on in Indonesia, we have hundreds of thousands of B2B customers. You guys might know the warungs, the pasars in Asia, and these are the customers we serve. So we serve to tens of thousands of warungs, pasar, restaurants from the modern hospitality to the traditional ones. And we partner with over 5,000 local farmers across Java. They're from East Java, New Java, West Java, and basically delivering the harvest goods of farmers to these B2B customers across the region. I'll give a brief intro about Eden Farm before going to our topic today about the labor market in Indonesia. So Eden Farm, as you guys, some of you might know, especially those of you who live in Indonesia, some of you are not Indonesian might not know, but the supply chain of farming in Indonesia is so fragmented. Starting from the farmer side, the goods from the farmers will go through so many layers of middlemen before it actually reaches them. So the carrots, the tomatoes, the chilies you guys eat might have gone through 3, 4, 5 hands before it actually reaches them. And because of that, prices in Indonesia is very volatile. As you guys know, chili prices, today it's less than $2 per kilogram. During peak seasons, it can go up to $10 per kilogram. It's so crazy. And nobody can guess what's happening. It just goes up and down and nobody knows why. And the main reason of this is because this is so fragmented. So many middlemen in the supply chain. And what we Eden Farm try to do is become the saver of the family. So we try to take as close as possible to the supply source. We go directly to the farmer or the farmer set and delivering directly to the demand side, which is B2B customer segment. Through this, we can create a more efficient supply chain. We can get the prices much cheaper from the farmers and deliver much cheaper and better quality to our customers. In a brief, that's about this farm. So, going on to our topic today about labor in Indonesia. So, labor in Indonesia is something that's, I would say, has been changing for the past few years. It's been quite traditional. There are so many different employment status in Indonesia that is common. One is being self-employed. I think this is something very common in Indonesia where a lot of people open shops, F&B stalls. You go around Yogyakarta Island, to Yogyakarta Island, and so many nasi goreng, pecel, sate kelata. A lot of people are self-employed in Indonesia. Partially, some people are also regular employees working in companies, corporates. That's a different employment status. Indonesia also has so many casual workers. These are people working such as in the manufacturing industry, become blue-collar workers. They work in factories daily without specific guarantees of how big their income can be typically. And we also have employers assisted by workers. These are, for example, you own a shop and then you employ somebody. You own a shop, sometimes you don't even have a permanent employee, just a casual worker. Okay, you need it today because you have peak demands for your higher salary. This is another employment status in India. And this is something, the final one is something very common in India, a family worker. I think some of you, for example, if your parents have a food stall, your parents have a food shop or something like that, and then you work for them, but you don't get paid. And there's actually a significant amount of these type of workers in Indonesia. especially in the Asian society, because a lot of Asian people, they open shops, they open food carts, they open food stalls, and they ask their kids to work for them. Sometimes not paid. But this is actually something common in Indonesia. Okay, so continuing a bit, so these are typically the employment status of labor in Indonesia. What is the biggest one? Which one is the biggest in Indonesia? Which one is the smallest? It's pretty much like this. Throughout Indonesia, with the age population 15 years above, 36% are actually employees. So people working in corporates, companies, and a lot of these actually are people going to the urban cities. People going to Jakarta, people going to Surabaya, because that is where the major economies are in Asia. But the rest, 64%, can either be self-employed. You see 20% of the population actually being self-employed. This is why in Indonesia there are tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of warungs. And I don't think anybody really knows the exact number of how many warungs and SMEs that Indonesia have right now. You go through Yogyakarta and you'll see thousands, probably tens of thousands of small shops, food stalls across Jogja. And this is where the major population is also in Indonesia. And a small amount being casual workers. These are people working in the agri field, manufacturing. And also you see 14, 15% people are actually family workers. So there's a lot of the population working for their family, but not getting paid. This is something funny, but very, very common here in Indonesia, especially when you're still probably in college, your parents have a shop, you work for them, helping them, and you don't get paid until probably you graduate from school and you actually own the shop. That's when you're gonna get paid. And where is the economy in Indonesia? Where do people actually work? So the majority of people actually work in Jakarta and Java. 60% of our economy revolves around Jakarta and Java, especially Jakarta. The next big population is in Sumatra, and the remaining islands, not so much. So these are why Java people is, like Java Island is the major economy of Indonesia, because that is where the biggest population is. There is where the biggest market is, especially Jakarta and Surabaya, which contributes to, if I'm not mistaken, almost 50% of Indonesia's economy now. So casual workers, this is something, I don't know how common it is in other countries, but in Indonesia, there are so many of them. People actually in casual workers, they don't have like employees, the typical employees, they will have minimum wage structures. They will have guarantees of social insurance and so on. But these type of casual workers, they don't. They are not bound to a specific, they have to come every single day, but they are typically paid on a per day basis. You come to work, you get paid. You don't come to work, you don't get paid. That's the typical casual workers. And there is no guarantee when they're gonna get a job. What's a good example of this? Sometimes this happens in the agri space. If the farmers are having a major harvest, they're gonna ask some of their friends to actually help them harvest, sort the goods, package the goods before delivering. And in the end, once the harvest stops, they don't get a job. There's still a big population. Casual workers contribute to around 26%, 10%, sorry, from the population. And some of them don't have a guarantee of jobs and income. And if you can see, the typical net income is only 2 million rupiah, so less than $200, probably only $150 per month. I think some of you students even get higher income from your parents compared to these casual workers. And this might not be enough for people to actually live in a good condition in the major cities. 2 million rupiah is way too small for them, but that is their condition now. Even the self-employed workers, people that have shops, people that have food stalls, majority of them even don't have a significant income, 2 million net income per month. So basically, it's only enough to suffice food for kids, for them, and they don't have enough money to expand their business, to do anything else beside of that. That's the condition of Indonesia now. Now, going to the labor. So typically in Indonesia, between workers or employees and company or employers, there is always an arrangement. And this is actually mandatory and obligated by Indonesian law. So if you, as a company, want to employ someone, you need to go into an arrangement called a work agreement, and this is mandatory. Without an agreement, then you are not obligated and you don't have the rights as an employee. One thing common in Asia is the typical major corporates, they will have a proper work agreement. So they will, if you guys start working one day in companies, you'll get this quite thick, probably 10, 20, 30 pages of agreement that some of you might not read at all because it's too thick. But that actually explains all the rights and obligations of you as an employee and what the company will actually give you. The salary, the work hours, your rights, your obligation, it's stated there. But a lot of the companies, especially in the early stages, from my experience that I know, don't even go into work agreement to employees. For example, if you just started a new company, you might not even know a proper work agreement, how it's supposed to be. But you employ someone, and that happens a lot in Asia. You pay them salary, but once the employee actually does something bad, you might not be able to, for example, punish him because you don't even have any agreement with them. If they actually steal stuff or do frauds to your company, you can't even do anything. Vice versa. If you as an employee don't go into work arrangement with the company and somehow the company doesn't pay you, you cannot sue them. You cannot ask for your salary because you've never got into any sort of agreement. You go to the court and they'll say there's no agreement. How do we know that you're actually an employee of that company? So this is something quite crucial for you guys to know. And this is something that in practice in Indonesia, it is still not 100% done correctly. There are many different types of work arrangement in Asia. One is an employment relation. Another one is partnership. I'll explain the differences later. So first one, going to employment relations. What is this? This is the typical company and employee work agreement, which shows like the relationship between you and the employee, the minimum wage, how many leaves you can take in a year. Do you have layoff rights? Do you have social insurance like BPJS? In Indonesia, there's the social insurance BPJS that you guys have a right as an employee. So there's two aspects on this that we need to know and you guys need to know. So one, there are some terms that is already regulated by our government, which is on the public law side. So the minimum wage of an employee in a certain region is already regulated by our government. For example, in Jogja, there's already the minimum wage standard. In Jakarta and Surabaya, it will be higher. And in each different cities, there will be different minimum wages. So for example, if you go to a city, you go to Jakarta, and a company suddenly offers you a wage below the minimum requirement wage, you can actually counter that. You can actually sue them actually, if they actually pay you somewhere below the minimum wage. That is your right as an employee. And this is already regulated by our government. So this is the positive side. But there is also a second aspect that is not regulated, but it is agreed between both parties, which is the private law. For example, this can be the bonus. So does an employee have the rights to get bonus from a company? They do have the right if it is pre-agreed with the company. If there is no agreement between you and the company, there is no mandatory for the company to actually give you bonus. For example, how many leaves can you take in a month or in a year? The government already regulates that minimum you can get 12 days of leave. But if a company actually agrees with you, okay, we will give you 24 days of leave in a year, that is okay. That can be attributed and considered in the private law. An agreement between employee and employer. Other aspects, this could also go into like work hours and work time. So the government or the public law in Indonesia doesn't control the days and the work shift of employees. They only state that an employee maximum can work up to 40 days a week, and that's it. Which means it can be like Monday to Friday and each day 8 hours of work. That's 40 hours. It can also go, okay, Monday to Saturday, but because it's 6 days, then per day only 7 days of work. It can also be done like that. So they only regulate, okay, in a week, an employer or an employee should work 40 days hour maximum, and that's it. if there are changes to that, for example, okay, we want to control, you work 40 days a week, but 4 hours in the morning, 4 hours at night, that will be stated in the agreement also through this private law. That is something flexible and agreed between an employee and the company, as long as it doesn't break the rule of the 40 hours per week. That's how it is in Asia. So this is something to consider. And why do we need to go into this agreement? Why is it so complex? Why do employees need to read through all these agreements? Because this actually secures your position as an employee about your wage, about your welfare, about your position as an employee, and making sure that the company doesn't actually abuse their power as a company to employees. So make sure if a company offers you one day, go through all the pages, understand the basic things you need to know. There's a minimum wage. You guys are entitled to social insurance and health insurance in BPJS. You guys know that maximum per week, you should work 40 hours in normal. Of course, sometimes you're gonna work overtimes. You can get paid for overtimes also, and that will all be pre-agreed in the private law side. So these are the different type of employment relations in Indonesia. In Indonesia, we know there's PKWT, PKWTT. What is the difference? So the first one, PKWT, is perjanjian kerja waktu tertentu, which means you are only contracted for a limited amount of time. For example, okay, this work agreement between you and the company will be only for 6 months. Beyond that, there is no right or obligation for the company to actually, for example, pay you or anything. 6 months only, limited time, but what is the consequences? If a party actually breaks the contract, for example, okay, the contract is 6 months, but you decide to quit in the middle of the contract, you as an employee is obligated to pay the remaining of the contract. So for example, if you get paid 10 million per month, contract 6 months, that means you're obligated for 60 million, but you exit or you quit in the middle of the way, then you might need to pay the company the remaining 30 million, and vice versa. If a company say, hey, this is a contract for you, I'm gonna contract you for 6 months, but they decide to lay off you on the third month, they will need to pay for the remainder of the contract to you guys. So that's PKWT, or limited time of work agreement. There's the second one, which is PKWTT, or waktu tidak tetap, which means there is no limitation to the time. This is one of the most common one in Asia, where basically you go into an agreement with a company, you work in a company, and there is no exit time. As long as you serve the company and you don't resign, they'll pay you every month. So this is PKWTT. In this side, if you exit the company, you resign, as long as you don't break any rules or obligations, then it's just an agreement, okay, you resign, and that's it. This is probably one of the most secure one in Indonesia, and there is a probation period typically for 3 months. So if you join a company, sometimes they will give you some sort of probation, and in Indonesia, the maximum probation period is 3 months. If you don't perform within this 3 months, they can cut you anytime within this 3 months. If after 3 months they feel you're okay, then you will be a full-time employee. But you have maximum of 3 months to actually show your capability and show the company that, okay, you guys are okay as a full-time employee. So this is something you guys need to consider. So that's the major difference between PKWT and PKWTT. PKWTT, contract, you exit in the middle of the way, you have to pay the remaining of the contract. PKWTT, probation. Once you finish the probation, no more contracts. That's it. You can exit anytime. The company can also, in a way, cut you guys off anytime. But in Indonesia, there are definitely rules to cover and protect employees if a company actually lays off somebody. For example, if you've worked for a certain amount of time, 1 year, 2 years, and somehow the company lays off you guys, you can get some sort of allowance. And there's rules regulating this in Indonesia. And then another one is a daily worker. So daily worker is something very common also, where people are actually paid not on a monthly basis, but a daily basis. So you come to the office, you get paid. You don't come to the office, you don't get paid. And these happens a lot in factories. So the labor workers, the blue collar workers, they come to the factory, they work for that day, they get paid. Next day they don't come, it's okay, they don't get paid. But for daily workers in Indonesia, the rule is one daily worker or a company can only contract a daily worker maximum 21 days a month. So if you employ somebody as a daily worker, you can only employ them for 21 days a month. If you go beyond that, for example, okay, you work 30 days for me a month. He actually has the right to be a full-time employee. That's how the law is in Indonesia. So if you employ somebody as a daily worker, but they work more than 21 days, they can somehow sue you and make them into a full-time employee. The final one, which is also common, is outsourcing. So this happens a lot typically on the sales field, where a lot of companies employ sales team using outsourcing. So what's the difference? The first, second, and third, these people are direct employees of the company. The outsourcing side, this people are not employees of the company directly. So the company will go into an agreement with an outsourcing company, and these employees are actually employed by the outsourcing company, but they work for the main company. So the recruitment, the salary payment, and everything will go through the outsourcing company, even though they work full-time for the main company. That's how outsourcing is. This is mostly common in sales departments. A lot of companies that have major sales, for example, fast-moving goods, companies that sell cooking oils, rice, soaps, detergents, everything. A lot of the sales team are outsourced. Why? Because they need major sales team. They have thousands of sales team. And there's no way they can manage all the sales team if everyone is their direct employees. So they use outsourced partners. Why? Easier to recruit, easier to manage. The payroll and salary goes through one single outsourcing management, and they will take care of everything else. So these are the 4 typical employment relations in Indonesia. And these are the typical things that are controlled and regulated in the work agreements. You need to make sure that in each agreement, you know what your salary is, you know how many leave or off days you guys have the rights of, do you have social insurance or BPJS memberships, and also what is the rules of religious allowance. Optional, but not always there, but you guys can actually ask for that. If you are an employee, you guys can ask for meal, transportation, or communication fees. You guys can also ask for birthday leaves, family cares, additional insurance, and annual bonuses. But this is not obligated by our government. This is an agreement between you as an employee and the company itself. So that's the first, being a work relation, the work relation between a company and an employee. The second type of relation between company and worker is partnerships. And this partnership is something that's been quite raising in the past few years. So a lot of companies in Indonesia, especially since the gig economy, which I will explain later, has been using a lot more partnership schemes rather than full-time employee schemes. Why? I think one of the most famous one you guys will know is Grab and Gojek. How many drivers do they have? I don't know, maybe tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of drivers. But not a single driver is actually their own employee. It is just a partnership agreement between them and the drivers. These partnerships are more flexible in a way because why? They are not main employees, not full-time employees, but they will get paid based on something. This happens in online transportations a lot. Salesmen also, some salesmen in the industry, they don't get paid fixed costs. They don't have a fixed salary, but every time they sell something, they'll get paid. Commission-based, profit-sharing-based, and also market surveyors. There's a lot of market surveyors. Once they've done the research, they'll get paid. They don't finish the research, they don't get paid. But there's pros and cons to this. What are the pros? For a company, it is much more efficient, which is why Grab and Gojek, the best example is they can grow crazy. They grow very crazy for the past few years without having a single full-time driver. Not a single one. Even us in Eden Farm now, we partner with 5,000 farmers, but not a single one is actually paid on a salary basis, no. We are partnering with them, they harvest, we pay them. They don't harvest, we don't pay them. And this is common. And to grow significantly without having a significant fixed cost or salary. But definitely there are cons to this. For example, there are no protection for the workers.
And this is something bad that's happening also to a lot of drivers. When Grab and Gojek were at their peak and people were still doing a lot of like rate hikes and everything, drivers get a significant amount of income. But now, as you can see, a lot of the drivers, probably there's more supply than demand. There's too many drivers now compared to the demand. Demand is always there, but there are way too many drivers because why? Somebody lose their job working in a manufacturing company or factory and they become a Gojek driver. They got laid off by a company and they become a Gojek driver. There's way too many Gojek drivers now. And that's causing them to have no protection at all. They don't have a fixed income on a monthly basis. They don't have any sort of social insurance or health insurance in a way that impacts them. And there is always a gap between the fixed full-time employees and part-time employees, because these are typically like part-times, freelancers, and everything. Full-time employees, you'll get a lot of benefits. Part-time employees, you work hard, you get something, you don't work, you get nothing. So there's pros and cons. But there's a lot of flexibility, especially recently. A lot of people actually enjoy being part-timers. Why? You work as a full-time somewhere, you get a fixed salary, and you become a part-timer somewhere else to get additional income. So this is the pros for you as an employee. If you have enough time, you're still young, work full-time somewhere else, and have a part-time job to actually hone your capabilities, get additional income. It can work. So this partnership, especially since, I would say 2016, has been quite on the rise since implemented more and more in a lot of companies. Since all these technology companies in Indonesia started booming in 2016, these partnership models has become quite a trend for a lot of companies. Gojek started this, Grab started this, and then all the technology companies implemented this. They don't want to have fixed salesmen because why? It's too expensive. If the salesman sells something, they'll get something. But if the salesmen are underperforming, the salesmen don't sell anything, they still need to pay the fixed cost, the fixed salary. So they changed the scheme into more of a partnership model. I'll explain more about the gig economy later. So these are the typical type of partnerships. How do people get paid in a partnership model? Some of them will get paid on an allocation basis. For example, these are typically people, for example, construction. You build my house, I give you some sort of allocation, 3 months, I'll pay you 50 million, build my house. You finish the job, you'll get paid. Some people are paid on a time period basis. So every time or every hour you work, I'll pay you something. These can be done, for example, in the graphic designers, people helping on the, for example, content creating. Some of them get paid on an hourly basis. Hey, you go to TikTok, sell my product, I'll pay you every time you go to TikTok, for example, something like that. And another one is some sort of like salary scheme, but it's a proportion based. Daily, some of them go through like profit sharings, commissions. So there are different schemes that people can get paid through a partnership contract. One of the biggest booms lately is on the programmer side, engineerings. I think since 2016, there are more and more engineers in the market, and a lot of engineers are not actually working as a full-time. They work as a part-time or freelance in technology companies. So they work for a certain project. Once they finish the project, they get paid, either on an hourly basis or a per project basis. And a lot of tech companies actually use this. Why? Sometimes they develop a product quickly, and then once the product is developed, they might not have future developments. They stay there, wait for the development or the pilot project to actually show result before creating something new. If they actually hire the engineers, what would happen? I create something, I stop developing, but I still need to pay the engineer every single month, even though I'm not developing something. That's an example. Has Eden Farm done this? Yes, on the logistics side. This is what we do. We have tens of thousands of transactions every day. We deliver tens of thousands of goods every single day, but we don't have a single fixed driver, full-time driver as our employee. We partner with third-party logistic and third-party partners as our drivers. Why? It's simple as if suddenly my demand goes up significantly, if all of my drivers are full-time drivers, I will need time to hire them. Recruit drivers are not easy. And once I recruit them, my demand might already go back to normal. By that time, I will need to pay all the fixed salary of the drivers, but my demand is not there yet. Vice versa. If during not peak seasons, my demand goes down, but I already have
a certain amount of full-time drivers, it's going to be too heavy for the company. Which is
why. The best way to navigate through this is how partnerships. If my demand goes up, I'll hire new drivers through third-party logistics, through outsourcing. Once my demand goes down back to normal, then I don't have any obligation to keep on working with them. I can let them go, they go back to their old jobs, and I can continue my business. Way, that is how it is in Asia. And this helps a lot of startup companies in Asia. Why? Startups don't have a predictability of growth. Some startups all of a sudden can go twice, triple the amount of revenue since last month. And if they try to hire new employees, new engineers, new driver, by the time the people are hired, the company probably would already grow another 2, 3x. So growth of a startup will always exceed the capability of a startup to hire new employees, which is why a partnership would always be one of the best scheme of new startups or new companies. Okay, let's see, am I growing or not? I'll employ a startup part-time or freelance. If my demand is constant, I'll make them a full-time employee. If not, I can let them go. That's a common practice happening a lot in Asia now. So going to the next topic, the gig economy era. What is gig economy actually? So gig economy is actually a new economy recently happening where people are focusing and depending more on part-timers, not full-timers. So previously, full-timers were the way to go. Probably until 2015, most of the companies will focus on having as many full-time employees as possible. But since the technology era, I think there is a new economy going on, which is called the gig era, where a lot of companies don't have too many full-time employees and focus more on getting part-timers and freelancers to actually expand their business. This is supported by 266 million people in Indonesia, and 96% have chat app messenger, WhatsApp. So almost everybody in Indonesia has a WhatsApp account. Almost everybody in Asia has a social networking apps, Facebook, Twitter, the recently booming TikTok, Instagram. So since this technology boom, and this is in 2020, probably now it's even higher, this shows that there is potential for people to work through technology. They can become part-timers, remote workers, without having the need to go to offline offices anymore. And this opened to a new economy in Asia where in 2019, the digital economy is only 21 billion worth. It grew significantly in 2020, and now I believe it's even higher than this. So it's a huge economy in Asia, and this is something that you guys, either you, one day being an employee, or one day you guys creating company need to know. There's a huge market going on, and there's a new way of navigating the labor market in Asia now. It's not the old way of doing business, there's a new way of doing business now. So who are the digital gig workers in Asia? Almost 70% is in the transport and logistics sector. As I've mentioned, the Gojek and Grab drivers. A lot of them were not Ojek drivers. So they were all offline Ojek drivers, the Ojek Pangkalan that you guys know. Previously, those that joined Gojek and Grab were only the Ojek Pangkalan, the offline Ojek players. But now almost everybody become Gojek Grab drivers. They might have a shop, but as a part-time, they work as a Grab or Gojek driver. They might work somewhere else from 8 to 5, and then at night, they become Grab and Gojek drivers. This is a new economy. You get a full-time from somewhere else, and then you become a part-timer somewhere else. One interesting also is people in the gig economy have higher earnings compared to those being in the original traditional sectors. But the average working hours of gig workers are longer, 49 hours of work in average, compared to those in the traditional segment, only 39 to 40 hours per week of work. So in a way, there's a lot of pros and cons to this. It definitely opens a new market for a lot of people. It's easier to get jobs now. Previously, to get jobs, you would need to graduate from a good university. You would need to have some sort of skill or expertise. Now getting a job is as easy as downloading a Gojek app and applying as a driver. You get a job, if it's only a part-time. So there's pros and cons to this. And Majority of the gig economy in Asia is through the creative and multimedias. So being a graphic designer, being a programmer is also a big segment going on. And there's definitely a lot of opportunities for you guys as an employee one day. Make sure you guys have expertise. You guys have expertise, you can sell that expertise. There's a lot of opportunity out there. And this is one interesting thing. So being a gig worker, even though you are only a part-timer, as you can see, this is a typical monthly salary. Definitely, a lot of them get paid less than 1 million per month, but a lot of people actually get paid more. So imagine being a part-timer, being a freelancer, but getting paid more than being a casual worker. Because casual workers in Asia, I mentioned earlier, typical net income, 2 million per month, maximum 3 million per month. But being somebody on a part-time and freelance part, you can potentially get more. So this is something quite interesting and happening in Asia recently. Now, definitely there are different pros and cons. So the pros, as an employee, what are the pros of you as an employee about this gig economy? It opens a lot of new opportunities. As I mentioned, you can become part-timers, you can get side jobs and side incomes, you can hone your capabilities while still working and getting stable incomes. There's a lot of pros to that. As a company, what are the pros? It offers a lot of flexibility. Like I mentioned, a lot of companies grew without having full-time employees. Grab, Gojek being the biggest transport hailing without having a single asset of transportation, without having a single full-time employee driver, and they grow and now IPO. But what are the cons to this? Are there cons? Definitely, yes. So workers in the gig economy are very prone to terminations. Why? You guys don't have any protections. The company can stop your service, can cut you off anytime basically, because you guys don't have any sort of contract or whatsoever. You guys are paid per job. You do the trip, you get paid. You don't do the trip, you don't get paid. If they stop you, you cannot do anything else. There are no wage protections. So if you become a full-time employee, going through the working relations, you have a minimum wage based on each region that you work in. But being a gig worker, there are no minimum wage. The more jobs you do, potentially higher wage. The less jobs you do, you might not get anything. There's no social insurance. And the fourth part is something that's probably going on a lot now, that a lot of the companies have unfair policies because they feel they have the power. So there's a lot of people working and looking for jobs out there. There's, I don't know how many Gojek and Grab drivers out there that don't have stable income. So everybody's looking for jobs and opportunities. And a lot of companies see this opportunity. They know they have the power, their bargaining power. So they can create unfair policies and tough policies for these gig workers to work on. Why? Because basically, even though you give an unfair policy, someone will really want to work for you and they'll say yes. That's happening. Even though it's very hard for you to get your commission, it might be super unfair for you as an employee, but if you need the money, you have your families to feed, you won't have any choice. And this is happening. This is the gray area happening in the gig economy now. So a lot of practices are not going as it is supposed to be. And still, in Indonesia now, there are no regulations from the government regulating these partnerships. So basically, as long as you at the company or an employee and the company agrees on the scheme, on the partnership scheme, nobody can say no. Nobody can say, hey, this is not right. Because it is pre-agreed between both the parties. And this becomes probably potentially abusive for some companies that are not doing good practices in the market. And final thing is, of course, being in the gig economy, potentially longer working hours, yes. A lot of engineers, they don't sleep. A lot of engineers, they work super hard to catch up to the mandates and requirements. A lot of graphic designers, freelance graphic designers, they have a 3-day, 1-week deadline to create a super big project, so they might not sleep for the whole week. This is happening. So there's pros and cons to this. Pros for the company, for pros as employees, and cons to the company, also cons to you as an employee. This is one thing for you guys to know. Now, how is it in Eden Farm? Do we do the abusive parts, or are we a good practice on, are we doing good practice in the labor market? So us in Eden Farm, from the right side, we have 5,000 farmers, and we don't employ even a single farmer. So we deliver hundreds of tons of goods, but we don't have a single full-time farmers on our payroll. We have pure partnerships. Every time they harvest something, we will give them money. How do we try to make sure that our practice is as good as possible for these farmers? So a lot of people, a lot of companies that work with farmers, they only do the typical buy and sell. Hey, you harvest, I'll buy. You don't harvest, goodbye. That's it. What we try to do differently now is farmers in Indonesia, some of them are even clueless of the good farming practices. It might be different to farmers in, I've heard that some of you come from like European countries, from Denmark and some other countries, and I know farmers there are a lot more wealthier. They know the good practices, they have the technologies. Farmers in America and Europe that I know have these huge tractors and huge land fields. Basically, they know what they're doing. Farmers in Indonesia, some of them only have 1,000, 2,000 square meters of land. Some of them have less than 1 million income per month. And a lot of them don't even know what's the best way to farm. What do they plant? Whatever their parents and grandparents have been planting. How do they farm? Whatever their neighbor is doing, I'll just do the same thing. When do they farm? Okay, I work in Jakarta. When it's harvest time, I go back to the city, I farm. Once I finish my harvest, I go back to Jakarta. So nobody takes care of the plants when they go to the cities. That's happening. Farming is a side job for a lot of people. So what we try to do differently in Eden Farm is making sure that farmers, hey, we don't only buy and sell, but we control what they plant. So we tell them, hey, rather than planting ginger, because there's no demand for ginger now, let's plant shallots, because we know Eden Farm has demand of shallots. Hey, this is not a good time to plant chilies, because it's rainy season, let's plant something else. So we give them harvest planning, what to plant, when to plant, how much to plant. We also give them SOPs and farming knowledge. So every week we have this farmers gathering, sharing farming knowledge, so that farmers, they actually know, okay, if my plant is sick, my crop is sick, what should I do? Because previously, if my crop is sick, I'll just say and pray. Okay, God, please help me. I hope my crop is doing fine. That's what a lot of farmers are doing, actually. They don't know the right medicine. They don't know the right vitamins to give to their crops. And last but not least is guarantee of off-taking. A lot of farmers in Asia, they might be doing good practices, but in the end, once they harvest, they don't know where to sell. That is why a lot of crops in Asia, you know, in a lot of seasons, people just throw away chilies in the streets. Hey, I don't know where to sell it, just throw it in the streets, or I'll sell it super cheap in the market. That happens, and that is what we're trying to change. So one, making sure that the partnership is not only buy and sell, but we tell them what to do, we give guidance, and we guarantee that every time they harvest, we will offtake their goods. That's the partnership scheme we do with the farmers. And then we don't only employ the farmers or pay the farmers, but in a way, we also work with a lot of the local villagers. So once the farmers harvest, there's definitely gonna be a lot of people that potentially can get a lot of income. They harvest, we will need people to do the QC, sorting, packing before we deliver it to the cities, and we will employ the local villagers in the farming village. Sometimes it will be the wives of the farmers, sometimes it will be the kids of the farmers, in a way that creates a different inclusive economy in that village. On the logistics side, we don't have our own drivers, as I mentioned, we partner. From the farmers' village to the cities that we sell to, we now sell in Jakarta, Bandung, Surabaya, and Semarang. We use the farmers' pickup trucks and small trucks. So we rent the trucks, we use their trucks, use their manpower to deliver it to the cities, and we use third-party drivers and third-party logistic in the cities to deliver to the end customers. And last but not least, we have a hybrid system for our employees. In a way, I believe that even though I regulate and tell employees, hey, don't work outside Eden Farm, I don't think that's applicable anymore, because a lot of people, a lot of young kids now, okay, I want to work full-time at one place, but I want to hold my skill and I get a part-time job, part-time income somewhere else, and we are very open to that. We have a hybrid system. Not everybody has to come to the office every day. I think since COVID, 2-3 years ago, a lot of companies already implement this hybrid system. But In the supply chain industry now, Eden Farm, we cannot do 100% remote. Because if we do 100% remote, then how will the warehouse team deliver their goods? There's no way that people can deliver goods if they're working from home. There will still be people that we need to work in the warehouses, in the offices to make sure that the supply chain goes on. But we open a lot of opportunities for people to actually have side jobs and side income. So this is how Eden Farm has adapted to the gig economy. And I believe this is something that will keep on improving in Asia for the next few years. Probably in other countries, it is much more advanced. I'm not sure how it is in European countries and other countries, but we are still a growing economy. There's definitely a huge market going on, and there's gonna be a lot of changes. And one thing you guys should know is you guys will need to adapt to this. How your parents and my parents have been working and how you guys will be working one day once you finish your university is gonna be totally different. There's no way that on the old days, okay, I work in a corporate state company, telecom, PLN, and then I decide to work part-time somewhere else. I don't think that was feasible or possible back then. But now it is actually get a lot of income. A company can be a lot more flexible, but you guys need to make sure that you guys know the pros and cons. Flexibility is a pro, but in a flexibility, there's always gonna be a risk coming with it. There's no such thing as high risk, no return. So higher risk, always higher return, low risk, low return. I think that's gonna be it about my presentation today. I'm gonna be looking more forward to discussion from you guys. So does any of you have any questions or anything to discuss about? I would be glad if we have the next few minutes or hour to have more discussions on whatever you guys wanna discuss. So I'm gonna open the Q&A session. Anybody wanna ask anything? Feel free.
Hello, my name is William. I'm from Denmark. I was wondering, where's your profit like in Eden Farm? So are you the facilitator between the farms and the grocery stores or restaurants and stuff? Or where's your profit in the process? Just so I can understand.
Sure. So the profit comes from the gap between the price we pay to the farmers to the price we get from the customers. So in a way with the farmers, previously farmers in Indonesia, they wouldn't know the price of goods. They harvest, they give it to middlemen, they don't know what's the price these goods are gonna get sold at. So the middlemen will go to the cities, try to sell it, and whatever the price is sold, they'll say to the farmer, hey, sorry, today I get paid this much, tomorrow I'm gonna get that paid this much. Now, what we do is, when we go to the farmers, they already know the price we set. So for example, chilies, okay, I'm gonna pay you 20,000 per kilograms. And then we go to the market and we try to get margins from this. If we buy 20,000 from the farmers, then maybe we go to the customers and say, okay, this is 25,000 or 30,000. That's where our profit comes from. We don't take we also give agri input to the farmers. So farmers that want access to seeds, cheap fertilizers, we give access, but we don't get profit from there now. We just give it in cheap because we can deal in higher amounts to the distributors, to the principals, but our main income now comes from selling the goods to the end customers. And typically it's like this. The bigger the customers, the longer they want to pay, like the big restaurant chains. We're talking about like Bebe Kaleo, we're talking about Mi Gacuan. Is there Mi Gacuan here in Jogja? Yeah, Mi Gacuan is one of our big customers in Jakarta, in Bandung, in Surabaya. The bigger they are, typically, the longer they want to pay, the higher we'll charge the fee, or the higher we'll take the margins. The smaller they are, the faster they want to pay, the smaller we also get margins. So that's how the arrangement is and where we get profits now in Eden Farm.
So is it correct understood that there's like two sides? So you increase the wealth at the farmers, to the farmers, and you also increase the supply just in general to the public? Or like, so you have two sides to like work?
Yeah, so there are two main value propositions. One is to the farmers. On the farming side, our main value proposition is we want to make sure that they get higher income and they have a guarantee and more stable income. We don't always buy higher than the market price to the farmers, but we ensure that they have a stable and monthly income. So that's what we do to the farmers. Because sometimes some middlemen will offer a super high price to the farmers, but this harvest they go to them, Next harvest, they say goodbye. So they don't have stability. For us, what we do to the pharmacists, we make sure that every month and every harvest, we will buy from you with a pre-agreed price. That way, they can know how much income they'll get every single month. Not from previously, sometimes they get income, sometimes not. That's on the farming side. To the customer side or the B2B customers, our main value proposition is cheaper prices and better quality. Since we can cut through the multi-layer middlemen, we can give a lot cheaper prices compared to them going to the central markets or pasars in near their place. And second is, since the goods go through directly from the farmers to them through our collection facilities and supply chain, the quality of goods are much better. If they buy from the pasar, the price might look cheap, but they will have to sort all the goods, and sometimes only like 60, 50% of the goods can be used. Through us, they can use majority of the goods directly. So that's the different value propositions we give. And in every business, value proposition is definitely important. So that's what we try to offer to our customers. We have two customers actually, the farmers and the B2B businesses.
Hope it's okay.
No worries, we have a lot of time.
So, looking at the scalability of your business, how do you source the farmers? Like, how do you find the farmers? And do you have a limit on how many farmers you can handle and or partner with, or is it just like on scale, like very scalable?
Sure. So this might be opening a book of our secret recipe, but it's okay for educational purposes. So we have two big segments now going on. One is the culinary segment. So these are the warungs, the restaurants that we serve to. And we have a different segment called the wholesale. So what is the wholesale? This is basically us opening stalls in central markets and pasars across our regions. Why do we do this? So the basic idea is like this. In a lot of industries, especially in agri, supply chain is a volume game. The higher the volume, the cheaper the prices will be. It's as simple as that. The higher volume you have, the bigger your bargaining power, the cheaper you'll get the goods. So what we try to do is we have a wholesale point to make sure that whatever volume comes from the farmers, we can always sell it to the wholesale. Because pasar is always there. There's, I don't know how many billions of rupiah going through pasars in Indonesia every single day. So whatever harvest comes to the farmers, first we go and see the demand of the culinary side. Okay, for example, there's 1 ton of harvest from the farmers, but the demand of the culinary side is only 200 kilograms. Then we'll sell the 200 kilograms in the culinary segment. These are where margins come. What happens to the rest? Will it be waste? No. We'll go to the wholesale. Because in wholesale, in pasars, you will see that all sort of grades can be sold. If you go to the restaurants, they will only want the grade A's, right? Maximum grade B. What happens to the grade C? It's gonna get sold in the wholesale and wet markets. That's what we do. And our biggest homework is actually balancing this. So farmers in Indonesia, I believe in Denmark, there's gonna be probably 70% grade A's, 30% grade B's, not too many grade C's probably. Indonesia is the other way around. Farmers, 20 maximum 30% grade A's, 40, 50% grade B's, the remaining are lower grades. And that is how it is, because farming is a side job. They don't know the best practices, which is why more are on the bad quality side, not the good quality side. But the restaurants only want the grade A's. So if you only sell to the restaurants, the remaining will become waste. So that is why we have the wholesale. We give the A's to these culinary customers. The rest, including the worst grades, we have two options. One is selling to the wholesale, the pasars, and whatever is left, we're gonna process them actually. For example, if we have remaining chilies, we can go through processing chili factories and give them like super cheap chilies. If we have remaining shallots, we'll turn them into bawang goreng or fried shallots. So, and for leafy greens, there's gonna be some remaining of the leafy greens, like for example, pak choy, lettuces, cauliflowers. We can actually turn them into fertilizers. So we try to make sure there is zero waste in the supply chain, and we always have a channel to channel the different grades of products. That's how we do it now. So to answer your question, is there a limit? As long as we believe our wholesale point can sell the goods, then the limit is only their maximum capacity. If we reach that capacity, means we need to open a new wholesale point. And it goes on and on until we wait for the culinary side to grow. That's the secret recipe behind Eden Farms, but hopefully it's for educational purpose. No competitors here, right?
So I actually have two questions. Let's start with one. Um, Looking at the competition, so I don't know much about your industry, so I'm curious about like what kind of or how many competitors do you have, and is it a saturated market or is it like an upcoming market, or how is it?
Do any of you know of the other agri players in Indonesia? Do the Indonesians kids know? Have you guys heard of Sayurbox, for example? Tanihub? Yeah, you've probably heard of Tanihub and Sayurbox. Those are the first movers in the industry, but they focus more on the B2C side. So they serve the end customers, they serve the housewives, they serve you guys. Our business model is slightly different. So on the startup landscape, Tanihub, the recent news for them is not so good. They were the first big agri player actually in Asia, even mentioned by the President Jokowi in one of his elections, but they're struggling now. Recently filed for bankruptcy. Cyberbox is still around, but they focus more on the B2C. So Eden Farm B2B, Cyberbox B2C. That's the competitive landscape. While for the traditional landscape, there are, I don't know how many thousands of traditional players there are. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of chili sellers. There's a lot of like people in the central markets that become small distributors delivering to also warungs and other pasaras, but huge in number, but small in sizes. So there's probably tens of thousands of them, but there is no single big player in the market. In Indonesia, we know some big companies that focuses on some commodities. For example, we have Sunpride that are really good in bananas and pineapples. We have rice players. A lot of people focus on grains and rice. But I think that's about it in the market. For horticulture products that we focus on, so Eden Farm, we focus on horticultures like chili, shallots, potatoes, leafy greens, foods that people consume on a daily basis. There is not a single big player yet, but there's a lot of pasars, as you know, like for example in Jogja, there's 120 pasars in Yogyakarta alone. Jakarta, there's hundreds of them also. So these are actually our competitors. We also sell to them actually. We sell to a lot of the pasars, but we are also competing with them if you want to sell to the warungs, the restaurants. So the competition landscape is fragmented and not a single big player yet, and that's what we're aiming for, becoming the first big player. And yeah, I think the main goal would be one day, if you guys know there's a Sunpride banana now, there's gonna be an Eden chili one day. That's the goal. Second question.
Oh, yes, exactly. So the second question is regarding communication with your partners, because you have a lot of partnerships. How do you like keep on communicating with those partners? The reporting like between the partners and Eden Farm.
Okay, so on the different parties, we have parties on the supply side, which are the farmers. We have parties on the logistics side, the third-party logistic, the drivers, and we have partnership with the customer side. And there's always going to be a main PIC for each different parties to go through the agreements, to make sure we have updated agreements, and going through the performances of each party. For example, on the supply side, yes, we do partner with 5,000 farmers, but we have a tool that monitors the performance of each individual farmers. So how do we monitor the performance of farmers? How is it? First is on the quantity that we agreed and the quantity they actually delivered. So for example, we ordered 1 ton and they only delivered 80% of it. That's gonna contribute to their performance. So how consistent and how accurate they actually deliver their goods compared to our order. That's first thing. Second is on the quality side. For example, if we expect 40% grade A's, 40% grade B's, what is the actual delivery? Is it less grade A's? Is it more grade A's? That's going to contribute also to the performance. And last is on the on-time delivery. If we say we need the goods today, will they deliver tomorrow, today? That also contributes. So in the end, this will become some sort of like farmers' performance monitoring. And we have a team dedicated to make sure which farmers are good performance, which are not. Those on the lower side of performance, we will have teams on the field to actually come to them talk to them. Do they have the commitment? Is that happening because they don't have the knowledge, or is that happening because they specifically doesn't want to commit to us? If they don't want to commit, then we will consider the partnership. We might terminate the partnership. If there's more issues, okay, I want it to be good, but I don't have the knowledge, I didn't have guidance, that's where our team will come in, making sure on the next harvest cycle, they do the right thing. That's on the supply side. Second is on the logistics side. So we have our own, call it the transportation tower team. So this team is dedicated solely on monitoring the deliveries. So every single delivery is monitored whether it is on time or not, which third-party logistic does the delivery, and then the condition of the delivery. For example, we're delivering goods. We're delivering chilies that can decay or downgrade during the transportation process. So we monitor this. One is based on the on-time SLA. If we say this needs to be delivered within 1 hour, is it on time or not? Second is the quality of the delivery. Were the goods downgraded on the way or not? And third is on the complaint. Complaint is more like, is the driver communicating and having a proper customer service to the customers when they delivered, or is the driver rude? If there's any complaint, it's going to contribute to their performance. So in the end, this will become a score, but we don't monitor the individual drivers. We monitor the logistic partners. So if they have like 10 drivers that partner with us, we don't care about the individual ones. We will average it into their single performance. So it's the same thing. The better the partners are, potentially we can negotiate a better fee, so they will maintain and stay with us. But those that have lower performances, we might negotiate two things, either terminating or lowering the fee. That's how we do it, the third-party logistic. Final one is on the customer side. This one is a lot more trickier because there's a lot of factors and variables going on. One is, so what we typically do is analyzing RMF, recency, frequency, and monetization. This is something quite common that you guys will probably go through once in the business side. So three things we monitor. One is recency. When did the customers last order? And how? F is frequency. How often do they order? And M, monetary, is how big do they order? So the higher the score, the more recent, the more frequent, and the bigger they order, we're gonna give some sort of like loyalty programs, special services, key account management to these type of customers to make sure that, okay, because these are the loyal and big customers, right? But those with lower scores, lower frequencies, lower monetary, then we won't have any special programs to them. We might come back to them once in a while, but we won't have any special programs. It's as simple as if you reach a certain milestone, we can give you special services so that they will order more. They will be intrigued, okay, if I buy 1 million more per month to Eden Farm, I'm gonna have some sort of like special sales team, then he's gonna join and probably buy more. So in a way, that's the different ways we navigate through these partnerships. That's how it is in Eden Farm. And I think that covers all of our major partners. All good?
So I just want to ask, how does your company identify and select the farmers it partners with? Like, do you have any specific criteria or standards that they must have before you partner with them?
Okay. Yeah, I think I also missed one part about how we acquire new farmers. Yeah, it's pretty much the same question. So how does Eden Farm get new farmers? There are different ways. One is we have offline team. These are called farmers relation. Basically what they do is, in Indonesia, it's called ngopi rokok. What they do basically go to the villages, find where people gather in the village, provide smoke, cigarettes, and coffee, and then just talk to the village heads. In a way, this is opening the relationship between Eden Farm and the village before we do business. Because if we go to a village and they don't know us yet, and we directly offer business, they'll say, who are you? We don't know you guys, we don't trust you. So we have people actually building the relationship first before we talk about business. People going on the field trying to find the influential people in the villages. In Indonesia's society, there's always going to be someone that's called Pak Ketu, Suhu, or typically the farmer's head or the village head, or the Pak Ustad. If we convince this Pak Ustad, or the leader of the village, or the leader of the farmers, every single individual farmer will say yes. So that's the job of our farmers relation. Find who's the boss, convince the boss. introduce Eden Farm and then convert the farmers. That's the first way of doing things. Second way is we're lucky enough that there's a lot of government institutions in Asia that actually support what we're doing. So we got a lot of connections from the Ministry of Agri, Ministry of Village. They have list of farmers. They have list of what their farmers are actually planting, and they connect us to the farmers. And this is actually the easiest way to get new farmers. We get the list, we approach, we introduce. And if we get introduced through the Ministry of Farming, the farmers majority trust us right away because they trust the ministries. They trust the Dinas Pertanian. They haven't known Eden Farm, but because the people in the fields, the ministry guys say, hey, Eden Farm is a good guy, they can help you guys, the farmers will follow. And final one is probably something that's only been happening for the past 1 or 2 years since we've grown is mouth to mouth. Because first 3,000, 4,000 farmers joined, they started introducing Eden Farm to other farmers, other relations, and we also get a lot of new farmers from there. So that's how we acquire new farmers. So how do we pick and choose the farmers? First is definitely through referrals. Those that's gone through referral, for example, the one that I mentioned, Ministry of Farming, they introduce us, they give the data of the farmers. We know how long they've been farmers, then we can approach them because we have the data. But for new farmers that we don't know yet how good their quality is, how good of harvest they have, we will typically do a sample. Okay, Pa, we know you plant this. Do you have a spec? Do you have a sample? We get the sample. We try transacting 1 time, 2 times, maximum 3 times. If we feel, okay, their quality is good, they have consistent deliveries, we feel they have commitment, then we're going to go into a partnership. But before we know their true quality, we might just have an ordinary buy and sell relationship with them without any contracts whatsoever. So that's how we typically do it. Minimum 3 transactions usually. I think the man in gray.
Test. My name is Alan. I believe that you say that you gave the farmers SOPs and education about how to plant some different crops and such thing. My question is, how do Eden Farm maintain the quality control of the farmers who grow their plantations and crops based on your SOPs? And what happens if the farmers fail or not being able to fulfill your minimum standard quality? Do Eden Farm hold any responsibility if the crops failing? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so how do we control? It's true that we cannot 100% control the qualities because it's in the end, it's the farmer's job. And there's a lot of nature factor going on. But what we do is like this. So we have agronomists. So we provide agronomy services to these farmers through a farming apps. So we have 2 types. One is farming apps. One is we actually have people on the field. So one guy, one project assistant we call it, can cover up to 10 hectares of land. And they'll visit different farmers every single day, go around the field, asking, hey, do you have any issues? And controlling the crops. They see, okay, the chili is growing fine. Okay, I'll move on to the next field. Okay, this field, I see an issue. I talk to my agronomist, hey, take a photo. What's happening to this crop? What should we do? The agronomist service is in the head office, actually. But sometimes they will visit the land if needed. But basically, it's just like an on-demand, hello, doctor call. Hey, the crop is sick. What can we do? What vitamin, what medicine should we give? That's in a way to minimize the risk of failed crops. Because crops are typically like human. If they're sick and you don't do anything, they potentially will die. But if they're sick and you give the right medicine at the right time, then they'll somehow recover. And that is how we can minimize the risk of like potential crop failure and everything. And from our experience, crop failure doesn't happen on a major basis as long as the farmers follow what we tell them. Why? Crops, like I mentioned, can be sick, give the medicine. If they don't give the medicine, that's where crop failure happens. But we've been doing this for 4 years now, controlling the farm side, and there has been no major crop failures. The maximum would be if we expect
100% yield.
suddenly because like nature issues, too heavy rain, we only get 80% of the harvest. That's typically how it is, but not so bad, up to like 50% crop failure and everything.
how do we navigate through the
different specs? We pay the farmers different prices based on the different specs. So the grade A's we will pay higher because we know we can sell higher. The grade B's we will pay lower, slightly lower, because we know we will sell it at a lower price point also. And this actually encourages the farmers to produce higher quality products. Because previously, no matter what the grade is, they'll get paid the same amount. In Indonesia, the middlemen, the tangkulak, they don't care about grade A's and B. What they know is I come to a field, hey, I have 10 million money in my pocket, I take all your harvest. Take it or leave it. That's what they do. In Indonesia, it's called ijon or tebasan. They don't know how many kilograms or tons. They just give 10 million, and then whatever is harvested, the middleman will take it. Probably sometimes the farmers lose money because potentially he could get more than 10 million. But sometimes the farmers might win because if the yield is bad, he'll get more money than what he's supposed to get. But there's no fairness there. So what we do now, we count the kilograms, we pay based on the grades. The higher the grades, the more they get paid. And in a way, that changes the mindset of the farmers from previously don't care about the grades, now they care about the grades because better grades mean better income. So we don't bear the risk of the yield. It's just that if there's more low risk, they'll get lower grades, they'll get paid less. We try to encourage them to be better farmers actually. And right now, if like for example, some of the farmers don't deliver as much goods as we expected, we can always buy the remaining markets or traditional players. So for example, I expected total 1 ton from all my farmers. Suddenly all my farmers only deliver 700 kilograms or 800s. My team will go to the markets, buy the remaining of the goods and sell it. That's how we navigate through the volatility from the farmer side. Because it's true that farmers, you can't expect them to always deliver 100%. It's not there yet. I think the ladies first, yeah. Yeah, whichever three of you, you can switch if you want to.
Okay, so my name is Abigail, and I would like to ask about the partnership SIM. So this partnership agreement SIM really does benefit Eden Farm in terms of cost efficiency, and as what you have stated before, this SIM does come with a lot of benefits, but also with high risk. And I'm just curious, what are the risks that comes with this SIM in terms to with Eden Farm, and how do you guys mitigate those risks? Thank you.
Okay, so the partnership scheme, yes, there's definitely a lot of benefits because it provides us flexibility. Like I mentioned previously, if they harvest grade A's, I'm going to pay for the grade A's. If there are more grade B's, then I'm going to pay for the grade B's. In a way, if I can potentially get higher income, I'll also pay more to them. If there's potentially lower income for me, then I'll pay them less also. So that navigates one thing. And on the quantity side, it's the same thing, right? Because I don't have a fixed payment to the farmers. I only pay base per harvest that I know I can sell. It provides flexibility for me. So less waste, less risk of oversupply, because I know that I'm only taking what I'm capable of selling. So it helped Eden Farm grow significantly for the past 4 years with having less than 1% waste in the industry, which in agri sector is almost never happening. Because in agri, typical waste is 10 to 20%. And if you're managing with less than 1% waste because we try to match this. So it does give a lot of benefit to us in Eden Farm in terms of flexibility. We learned this from Gojek, how they grew significantly without having a single drivers, from Uber being the biggest taxi provider without having a single taxi. Eden Farm is the same, being one of the biggest player in the agri without having a single fixed farmer in a way. But there's definitely a risk to it. What is the risk? One is sometimes farmer cannot commit to the quantity. So I might expect, okay, I have a peak demand. I expect 1 ton of good, and somehow my farmers don't deliver as much, and I cannot blame them for that. I cannot sue them, I cannot punish them because the agreement is pay per harvest. If they don't harvest or they don't give the goods to me, then I cannot blame them in a way, right? What we try to do is we try to make sure we have different layers of supply. Yes, we do expect some of our supply and majority of our supply coming from farmers, but we also partner with local players, like I mentioned, with players in Pasar, traditional players to make sure that if the demand goes up, but my farmers cannot fulfill what I wanted, I can have options and backup plans to buy from other parties. Definitely, potentially for me, lower margins, higher prices from the suppliers compared to farmers, but that is how we try to balance between the farmers and the different layers. The final part dealing with farmers is we have some scheme in farmers. The partnership is not always just buy and sell, but it's called contract farming, where we provide the agri input to the farmers. So there's a lot of farmers funding scheme going on in Asia where some bank partner or fintech partner might go to the farmers, give the money. Okay, once you harvest, pay me back the money. And then the farmers don't give back the money. That happens a lot. What we try to do differently is we give the agri input to the farmers, so the seed, fertilizers, we give the knowledge and supervision, and we take the off-taking. If they harvest, we buy the goods. There's a risk to this where we can give the agri input to the farmers, but somehow they sell it to other parties. That can potentially happen. It happened a lot in the market to other players. So a lot of these banks, when they give the money to the farmers say, hey, I'm sorry, I failed my harvest, but it's not what happened. They probably sold it somewhere else and didn't tell the fintech or the bank players that the harvest, they just said that the crops went bad. So what we try to do and mitigate the risk is having people on the field. The project assistant that I mentioned that visits the field every single day going around. Yes, there's still a lot of manual and labor work, but that's what we try to do to minimize the risk. So that's how we try to manage the risk in Eden Farm. Yeah, blue shirt.
Okay, so I would like to follow up a question also from the last question. It's actually about employment relation. You explained that by employment relations, we also have public law. But I see that Eden Farm having partnership with the farmer, there is no obligation for Eden Farm to give employment relations such as public law, such as minimum wage. You don't have to pay any minimum wage, or even the BPJS, and even regulating leave entitlements. So how can this partnership by Eden Farm can cover this employment relations, especially in their public law to the farmer? Thank you.
So on the public law, or what is regulated in the Undang-Undang Ketenagakerjaan, the law of manpower, it only applies if you are on a full-time employee partnership or a working partnership agreement, which is what I mentioned, the PKWT, PKWTT part. So as long as you don't go into that agreement or the working relation, and you only go into the partnership, then you are not bound to the public law. So the public law only applies to the working relation. If you and a farmer go into a PKWT agreement, PKWTT agreement, then you need to follow the minimum wage and all these laws. But if you go into the partnership scheme, then it is a lot more flexible. Like the Gojeks. That is the reason why Gojek don't need to pay the drivers UMR, right? But they just go into partnership scheme. So in Eden Farm, we feel that it is still not the right time yet for us to give full-time salaries to farmers. Why? Because even a lot of the farmers are not working full-time as farmers. They're still part-timers. Some of the farmers are not even fully committed yet. So being a partnership model is still the best way to gain their trust before us. Maybe one day we can give better benefits to them. Iya, boleh.
So, and I would like to ask also, so without those relation, how can Eden Farm actually provide trust to the farmer that Eden Farm won't leave farmer after the farming time? Yeah, and I believe we know that farmer also have kind of, sorry to say, but a lack of education, and I think Eden Farm should, how can, what the initial of offer by Eden Farm to the farmer? Thank you.
So how does Eden Farm gain trust from the farmers? I think in any business and any relationship you do with anybody, walk the talk. So if you promise something, make sure that you actually do your promise. So all of our teams that work in the supply side, the main promise that we give to the farmers is if you join us and follow what we do, we can give you better incomes. So first is, if we say that we're gonna buy their harvest, we deal on a certain quantity, we will always make sure that we will buy it, no matter what the condition is. If we pre-agreed, okay, every week we're gonna buy 100 kilograms of potatoes from you, no matter the condition of the demand of Eden Farm, we try to make sure that we will buy it. Oh, suddenly there's an oversupply, more potatoes than the demand of potatoes. It's our homework to somehow sell it. And through this trust is how we gain the trust of the farmers. Make sure that what we promise, we deliver to the farmers. It did take time. It was not a direct, after 1 year, all the farmers trust us. No, it took us almost like 3 years doing this before we get a full trust from the farmers. And the mouth to mouth of the farmers actually help a lot in this. If we already show to 1, 2, 3 farmers that we fulfilled our promise, we did give them better income and stable income, they will tell their relations, and that's how we gain the trust of the others. So in the end, the mouth-to-mouth effect will help. But the key thing how we grew is making sure we fulfill our promise, which is whatever we promise we buy, we will buy it at the price we agreed. That's how we did things.
Okay, so thank you for the great presentation. It's actually inspiring to know a site other than Cyrobox and Tani Hope who ventured in B2C, and now I'm seeing another business plan that's going on the B2B part. So considering the fact that there are seasonal crops, how do you plan to set standardized or at least the base price to purchase the harvested goods in the upstream supply chain, as in the farmers, while maintaining the price volatility in the downstream supply chain? And another part would be, how do you effectively manage the inherent risk associated with the changing customer preferences? Thank you.
Okay, so one of the reasons why Eden Farm, when we started the company, we focus on B2B is stability in demand. If we go into the B2C, like for example, you guys, today you'll probably want watermelons. Next week, you're gonna want probably lemons. The other week, you're gonna want avocados, and it's gonna keep on changing. There's no pattern in B2C. And we cannot bring this to the farmers. There's no way we can bring uncertainty to the farmers, which is why we focus on the B2B. A warung, for example, if they consume chilies and shallots this week, will they somehow change their menu every week? No. They have the same menu, they sell the same thing, they have quite a stable demand, so they're gonna order to us the same thing over and over again. And this creates a pattern. And in Indonesian culinary, the biggest demand of crops comes from chili, shallots, potatoes, tomatoes. There's sambal everywhere. It's not Indonesian cuisine if it's not sambal. If it doesn't contain shallots, it's not Indonesian cuisine. So in the end, after we ran this after several years, the biggest demand always comes from chili, shallots, potatoes, and tomatoes. So there's already a quite stable pattern, and this is what we bring to the farmers. And luckily, these crops are not seasonal crops. These crops can be planted all year long. Seasonal crops are typically fruits, and that is what the B2C demand are. B2C requires a lot of seasonal fruits. During durian season, people want durian. During mango season, people go to mangoes. A lot of seasonality. But chilies, it can be planted all year long and harvested all year long. Shallots, potatoes, tomatoes can be planted almost anywhere and all year long. And that's what helped us maintain the relationship of the farmers, because these farmers are not seasonal farmers, but they plant and harvest almost all year long. So that's how we maintain the seasonality issue. There's definitely a risk of inventory risk and demand risk, but I think since we don't harvest and take 100% of goods from the farmers, like I mentioned, we take 60, 70% from the farmers and trade the rest with traditional players, with central markets. That is how we minimize the risk of volatility in the market and demand. If demand goes up, okay, we'll just source more from the traditional players. If demand goes down, then we'll take from the farmers, but we'll order less to the traditional players and central markets. That's how we navigate through the risk of volatility. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, okay. So I would like to ask, so as a food services that supplies, farm supplies to business, many startups like Sagari and Sayurbox, even though that they say that they support local farmers, some of their products such as citrus or other fruits are still imported from foreign countries. And I just look at Eden Farm catalog and it also sells like import lemon and other imported fruits. And I just want to know, does Eden Farm's partnership scheme for imported products involve direct collaborations with foreign farmers, or does the company primarily rely on purchasing from foreign middlemen? Thank you.
Okay, so yes, we do still have products imported. One of the big issues with these imported products in Asia is, for example, fruits. The quality of and price of imported lemons are much better but cheaper compared to our local lemons. So for example, lemons, some of the good lemons are produced in West Java. We call it local grade A lemons. But the water quality of our local lemons compared to those that we import from, for example, from Australia or China, less water. While people in lemon, they require the juice of the lemon, and it is much cheaper. So it's something funny. Same thing happened for us in garlic and onion. We have huge amount of shallot lands in Indonesia, but nearly no garlic farms in Indonesia. Garlic is used in almost all Indonesian cuisines, bawang putih. But we don't have a local, well, there is a local farm, but very small. 95% of garlic consumption in Indonesia is from imported garlic from China. Why does this happen? One of the main issues is our local garlic is smaller in size, but much more expensive, almost twice the price of China imported garlics. China imported garlics are what you see in the markets, big in sizes, and half the price of our local garlics. So one of the issues of imported goods in Asia are our local produce still cannot compete with these imported goods. Why? Garlic requires huge land. And the garlic farming in China is already so efficient and so big, that is why they can produce very cheap goods. They use tractors, they use technologies. Our garlic farms is still very traditional and very small in sizes, which is why we cannot compete. So who do we partner with for these imported goods? We don't partner with the farmers, we just partner with the local importers. So there's local distributors always that sells garlics, onions, and these imported fruits, and we just buy from them. So we don't partner with the farmers in China or whatsoever now. It's a shame that such a huge land, but we don't have garlic, onion farming, but it is how it is now in Indonesia.
Thank you for answering all of our questions. You mentioned that when it comes to competition, there's not much yet when it comes to the B2B sector in agriculture, and you're aiming to dominate the market, right? So I'd like to ask if you also do benchmarking, and to what companies and how do you do it, and how, given that there's no much of a competition, how do you ensure that you're on top of your game and constantly growing?
Okay, so how are we making sure we're on top of our game is we're still a startup. We're still quite early, even though we know we're the biggest B2B, but B2B in startup is probably not as big as B2Bs in other industries where you see the giants in the fast-moving consumer goods like Unilever. They're already so big. So a good benchmark from us typically is established companies. For example, Charung Popan, Java, PT Koki that does rice. They are in a way similar to us, just different crops. Java, similar model. They try to control the supply side by providing funding to the farmers, to the chicken ranchers, controlling the supply chain of the chicken and selling to the end customers, and mostly B2Bs also. Pete Hoki, they do rice. In a way, similar, different crops. So what we benchmark is with them. What is the typical logistic cost? What is the typical margins? How do they do things and how they navigate through this industry? And yeah, that's how we benchmark ourselves. And how do we make sure we're on top of our game? So startups, if they don't grow on a month-to-month basis, then we know something's going wrong. So it is a high pressure from us to our team and from our investors and shareholders to us. But if they don't see growth on a month-to-month basis, they're always going to say something is wrong. So we always try to make sure that, hey, we always need some kind of growth. And growth, I'm not sure where you guys are on the startup scheme, but 3 4 years ago, everybody was talking about revenue. It's just about how you go on the top line. More customers, more revenue. Don't care how much you burn money, as long as you get new customers. That was how it was 2, 3 years ago. Since last year, 2022, early last year, the startup scheme has changed. The goal was no more on the revenue side, it was on the profitability side. So how can we increase profit? How do we be more profitable than we were last month? That's how we make sure we're on top of our game. Are we actually more profitable than last month or not? If we are somehow not more profitable, then there's something going wrong. That's how we make sure. So a lot of startups now are aiming to be profitable as soon as possible. So that's how we make sure that we're doing something right or not. More margins, less costs, better customer side, more healthy revenues. That's how we make sure we're on top of the game. Okay. Any more questions? Do we still have time? Oh, we're right on time. Anybody else? All good? Okay. I think pas waktunya habis juga ya Bu, jam 12 ya. Okay, we're right on time. Everybody, thank you very much for your time, and I'm so happy that we were able to discuss a lot of things. So I'm totally open if you guys want to have any further discussions after this. You guys can ask for my contact number through the UGM team. So it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the time, and thank you for all the questions. It was great sharing my knowledge with you guys, and hopefully one day once you guys finish your college, I'll see you guys on the industry. Thank you very much, everybody.